Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is Allegiant by Veronica Roth. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. From the moment Prior chose to leave abnegation for Dauntless, her world began to unravel. What started as a simple decision of identity, selflessness, or bravery quickly escalated into a war that shattered everything she knew. In Divergent, Triss discovered that she was not like most people. She was divergent, someone who didn't fit neatly into a single faction. But in a society that prizes conformity and order, divergence was a threat. As she trained among the Dauntless, she uncovered a growing conspiracy within the city, one led by the erudite faction to seize control through manipulation, fear, and ultimately genocide. The attack on abnegation was devastating. Under G9 Matthews' control, Dauntless soldiers were programmed into mindless killers, slaughtering their own families. Triss lost her parents in the chaos, but managed to shut down the simulation, exposing the faction system's deep corruption. But her victory came at a cost. She had to kill one of her closest friends, Will, in self-defense, leaving her burdened with guilt. Then came Insurgent, where the battle lines blurred even further. The factions crumbled, and war erupted between the erudite-led regime and those resisting their rule. Triss and Tobias, now fighting for survival, found themselves entangled in shifting alliances. They sought to uncover the truth hidden in the erudite headquarters, secrets so vital that G9 was willing to kill for them. The resistance fractured as Evelyn, Tobias's mother and leader of the Factionless, seized power in the vacuum left by G9's death. But Triss's real victory came in the form of knowledge, a message from a woman named Edith Prior, revealing that their city was nothing more than an experiment. The faction system was never meant to last. It was merely a test. And now, that test was over. With the city in turmoil and Evelyn's factionless regime taking control, Triss and her friends stand at the edge of an even greater mystery. What lies beyond the city walls? Who has been watching them all this time? And what does it mean that their entire world was designed by people they've never even met? In Allegiant, these questions will finally be answered. But the truth waiting for them outside is more dangerous than they ever imagined. Betrayals will deepen, loyalties will be tested, and Triss will be forced to make a choice more difficult than any she has ever faced. As the final book in Veronica Roth's thrilling trilogy, Allegiant will take us beyond the city walls into an uncertain future, one where freedom comes at a price. Now, let's begin. The city has changed. What was once a society ruled by factions, each person bound by the rigid principles of self-sacrifice, intelligence, honesty, peace, or bravery, has now become something unrecognizable. The walls that divided them for generations still stand, but the systems that upheld them have crumbled. Evelyn Johnson Eaton, leader of the Factionless and Tobias's estranged mother, has seized power, dismantling the faction system with brutal efficiency. She has promised freedom, but all Triss sees is another form of control. The city, now under the rule of the Factionless, is more tense than ever. There is no clear enemy anymore, no erudite dictatorship, no dauntless soldiers under simulation control, just the creeping fear that no matter who is in charge, oppression will always follow. Triss watches as people struggle to adjust to this new world. The Factionless control everything, patrolling the streets with weapons in hand, enforcing Evelyn's decrees without question. There is talk of rebellion, whispers in alleyways, and hurried conversations behind closed doors. Some people want the factions restored, believing the old system provided stability. These rebels call themselves the Allegiant, a group determined to resist Evelyn's growing dictatorship and fight for a return to what they knew. But Triss isn't sure where she stands. After everything she has seen, after all the destruction, betrayal, and loss, does it really make sense to return to a broken system? The factions may have been designed to create order, but they also divided people, made them enemies. She knows this firsthand. She has fought and bled because of those divisions. And yet, she doesn't trust Evelyn's version of leadership either. This isn't freedom, it's just another form of control, one enforced through fear and intimidation. Tensions rise further when Evelyn orders the citizens to surrender their weapons. Her message is clear: violence will not be tolerated, and any threat to her authority will be eliminated before it has a chance to grow. People line up in the streets, handing over guns reluctantly, some casting wary glances at the factionless enforcers surrounding them. Others refuse outright. Triss sees their resistance met with swift retribution: arrests, beatings, imprisonment. It's clear to her that Evelyn is not just trying to maintain order. She is systematically removing any chance of opposition. Tobias is caught between his loyalties. He wants to believe that his mother is different from the ruthless leaders before her, that she will not become another G9 Matthews, another Marcus Eaton. He spent years fearing his father's violence, wishing his mother had been there to protect him. But now, he sees that Evelyn is not the savior he once hoped she would be. Her vision for the city does not include free will. It only includes obedience. Meanwhile, Triss is grappling with a different kind of battle, one within herself. The revelation that their city was an experiment has left her questioning everything. The factions, the war, the suffering, all of it was orchestrated, carefully planned by people they have never even met. She can't ignore the call of the outside world, the truth that lies beyond the walls. If their lives have been manipulated this entire time, then she needs to understand why. She isn't alone in her desire. Johanna Reyes, the former leader of Amity, reaches out to Triss and Tobias, revealing that the Allegiant are planning something big. They don't just want to restore the factions, they want to leave. They believe the message left by Edith Prior was meant to be followed, that their city was never supposed to remain isolated forever. The outside world is waiting, and it's time to find out what is beyond the walls. But leaving won't be easy. Evelyn has made it clear that anyone attempting to escape will be met with force. Surveillance is tight, and the factionless patrols make it nearly impossible to move through the city undetected. Still, the Allegiant are determined. They have devised a plan, and they need Triss and Tobias to be part of it. When the time comes, Triss and Tobias join the group set to escape. Along with Christina, Kara, Uriah, Tori, and Peter, they make their way toward the city's perimeter, dodging patrols, sticking to the shadows. The air is thick with tension. One wrong move could mean capture or worse. Then, disaster strikes. As they near the wall, they are spotted. Gunfire erupts and chaos follows. Tori is shot, collapsing to the ground before anyone can reach her. Triss wants to go back to help, but there's no time. The others pull her forward, urging her to keep moving. The loss is sharp, a reminder that every step they take toward freedom comes with a price. They reach the wall, and with everything they have left, they climb. Hands grasp at the rough surface, muscles burning as they pull themselves up, higher and higher, until they reach the top. For a brief moment, they hesitate, looking back at the city that has been their entire world. Then, one by one, they jump. The world beyond is not what they expected. Instead of a bustling civilization or endless fields of untouched land, they find desolation. The air is dry, the earth cracked and barren. Abandoned buildings rise in the distance, crumbling reminders of a past long forgotten. There is no sign of life, no sign of the people who supposedly created their society. Just an eerie silence, stretching as far as the eye can see. But they are not alone. Before they can fully process their surroundings, a group of strangers appears, armed, uniformed, waiting. Triss tenses, expecting hostility, but instead, the strangers greet them with something unexpected: recognition. They have been expecting them. Triss's mind races. Who are these people? How long have they been watching? And most importantly, what do they want? She left the city searching for answers. But something tells her that the truth waiting for them outside will be more dangerous than she ever imagined. The wind is different outside the city walls, harsher, carrying a scent of dust and something metallic. As Triss and the others stand facing the group of uniformed strangers, tension coils tight in her chest. They are not being attacked, but that doesn't mean they are safe. One of the strangers steps forward, a man with dark hair and sharp eyes. His uniform is sleek, dark gray, and unlike anything Triss has ever seen before. He introduces himself as David, the leader of the Bureau of Genetic Welfare. The words mean nothing to her, but the way he speaks, calm, certain, suggests that he has been waiting for this moment for a long time. David and his team lead them away from the ruined outskirts, deeper into what appears to be a carefully protected compound. As they move, Triss takes in her surroundings. The world outside isn't just abandoned, it's broken. Buildings lie in rubble, roads are cracked, and the land itself looks like it has been wounded. Yet, within the Bureau's walls, everything is pristine. The contrast is unsettling. Once inside, they are processed with efficiency. A woman scans their retinas, takes their blood, and records information about them as if they are research subjects. Triss bristles at the treatment, but David reassures them that this is standard procedure. It is, after all, the Bureau that has been running the city's experiment. The revelation sends a shudder down Triss's spine. She knew the city was an experiment, but seeing the people responsible for it is something else entirely. The Bureau has been monitoring them for generations, watching as their society fractured and fought, as lives were lost and power changed hands. Triss wants to be furious, but she needs to understand. David offers them explanations. He tells them about the history that led to the creation of their city. It all started with genetic manipulation. Long ago, scientists attempted to improve humanity by altering DNA, removing traits considered undesirable: violence, selfishness, cowardice. But the plan backfired. Instead of creating a better society, the genetic experiments led to unintended consequences: fracturing people's personalities in ways no one predicted. The world collapsed into war. In response, the government formed the Bureau of Genetic Welfare, tasked with fixing the damage. They created isolated experiments, cities where genetically damaged people could be observed and hopefully corrected over generations. Chicago was one of those experiments. The factions weren't just a way of organizing society, they were a way to measure the success of genetic healing. Tris listens, but something about this explanation feels wrong. The Bureau sees her and Tobias, sees everyone in their city as nothing more than an experiment, test subjects whose struggles were part of some grand scientific equation. She clenches her fists. The battles they fought, the people they lost, were not just data points. They were real. They mattered. But David is most interested in her. Tris is something rare, genetically pure. Unlike Tobias, whose genes remain damaged, Tris's DNA has supposedly healed, making her one of the first successful cases in generations. David treats this as an achievement, as if her existence validates everything the Bureau has done. Tris, however, sees it differently. She has never thought of herself as superior to anyone, least of all Tobias. The Bureau's insistence on this genetic divide feels disturbingly familiar, just another way to label people, to create a hierarchy where there should be none. Tobias, meanwhile, is grappling with his own discomfort. For years, he has struggled with his identity, with the trauma of his past and his search for belonging. But now, being labeled as genetically damaged feels like another rejection, another reason he is seen as lesser. The Bureau's staff don't treat him with hostility, but there is an undercurrent of condescension in their words. They believe he is flawed in a way that Tris is not. The divide between them grows heavier. Tris doesn't see him as damaged, but the Bureau does, and that perception begins to wear on Tobias. He starts to wonder if the Bureau's system is really so different from the factions they left behind. If people will always find a way to create divisions, to determine who is better and who is lesser. While Tris focuses on uncovering the Bureau's secrets, Tobias becomes entangled with another group within the compound, those who oppose the Bureau's ideology. Among them is a woman named Nita, who reveals that the Bureau's treatment of the genetically damaged extends far beyond condescension. The Bureau controls their entire lives, keeping them contained, preventing them from ever achieving true equality. To Nita, the Bureau is just another oppressor, hiding behind science to justify its actions. Nita approaches Tobias with a proposition. She is planning an attack on the Bureau, aiming to weaken its control and expose its hypocrisy. Tobias is torn. He sees the cracks in the Bureau's system, the way it continues to divide people instead of uniting them. But he also knows that acting rashly could put everything at risk. Still, he wants to take action. He wants to fight for something. Tris, however, is wary of Nita's plan. She senses that there is more to the story than what Nita is telling them. She urges caution, reminding Tobias of what happened the last time he trusted someone too quickly. But Tobias is tired of feeling powerless. He wants to do something, to make a difference in a way he never could inside the city. As tensions mount, Tris and Tobias find themselves on opposite sides once again. The rift between them deepens, not just because of the Bureau, but because of what it represents. Another system built on control. Another battle between those who hold power and those who don't. Triss is determined to find the truth about the Bureau, about the world outside, and about the future they have all been thrown into. But she is beginning to realize that the greatest battles are not always fought with weapons. Sometimes they are fought within, against the voices that tell them they are not enough, against the systems that insist on defining them, against the past that threatens to pull them under. And as she looks at Tobias, she wonders if this will be the battle that finally breaks them. The days inside the Bureau stretch on, filled with uneasy revelations and a growing sense that they are simply moving from one controlled environment to another. Triss spends most of her time studying the Bureau's records, trying to understand the full extent of what they have done, not just to her city, but to others like it. There are files detailing the rise and fall of other genetic experiments, cities wiped out before they could succeed, entire populations erased with the press of a button. It makes her stomach turn. David, however, continues to insist that their work is for the greater good. He speaks of a world that is still broken beyond the Bureau's walls, where people like Triss are needed to help restore balance. To him, the Bureau is the last hope for humanity's redemption. Triss doesn't trust him, but she listens, because buried in his words is information, pieces of a puzzle she is still trying to put together. Meanwhile, Tobias is drifting further from her. He spends his time with Nita and her group, drawn into their mission to expose the Bureau's corruption. They believe the Bureau is lying about its true purpose, that it is not just observing genetic experiments, but actively manipulating them. And they have proof. One night, Nita takes Tobias through a restricted wing of the Bureau, where rows of screens display live footage from inside the Chicago experiment. It is surveillance on a scale he never imagined, with cameras tracking every movement inside the city. Even worse, he sees reports detailing interventions, moments when the Bureau has interfered, altering events to maintain control. Some of the city's greatest tragedies were not accidents, but orchestrated manipulations. Tobias clenches his fists. This isn't just about genetics. The Bureau is playing God, deciding who lives and who dies under the guise of scientific progress. And all the while, the people inside Chicago believe they are free. He thinks of Evelyn, of Marcus, of the Factionless and their war. How much of it was real? How much was engineered? Nita's plan is no longer just an idea, it is a necessity. She tells Tobias that the Bureau has developed a powerful weapon, a serum capable of erasing memories entirely. If used on the city, it could wipe out everything, rewriting history in a matter of hours. The Bureau claims it is only a last resort, but Nita doesn't believe them. She wants to destroy the serum before it can ever be used. Tobias hesitates. He has seen what weapons like this can do. He remembers the attack on Abnegation, the way Erudite used a different kind of serum to turn dauntless soldiers into mindless killers. But he also knows that doing nothing means allowing the Bureau to continue its control, unchecked. He agrees to help. Triss, however, is not convinced. When Tobias tells her about Nita's plan, she immediately sees the flaws. Nita claims she wants to destroy the serum, but Triss suspects there is something more, something Nita isn't saying. And she is right. The night of the attack, Triss follows Tobias and Nita into the restricted area, where they find the serum storage facility. But just as Nita's group moves to break in, alarms blare through the Bureau. Guards flood the room, guns raised, and everything erupts into chaos. Nita wasn't just here for the serum. She was here to attack the Bureau itself, to send a message that would cripple their control. And she was willing to do anything to make that happen. Explosions rip through the compound. Tobias barely manages to drag Tris to safety as flames consume the laboratory. Nita's group scatters, but not before several guards are killed. The Bureau is in an uproar, and David does not hesitate to retaliate. Nita is captured, thrown into a holding cell, and branded a traitor. Tobias stands frozen, watching as she is dragged away. He had believed in her cause, but he had been blind to her true intentions. He had let his anger at the Bureau cloud his judgment, and now innocent people had paid the price. Tris is furious, not just at Nita, but at Tobias. She sees this as another example of his recklessness, of his inability to see past his own need to fight back. She tells him that trust is not something she can give freely anymore, not after everything they have been through. The words cut deeper than she intends. Tobias realizes then that he is losing her, that each mistake he makes is driving them further apart. He wants to fix it, but he doesn't know how. Meanwhile, David tightens his grip on the Bureau. The attack has only solidified his belief that the genetically damaged are dangerous, that they cannot be trusted with freedom. He declares that stricter measures will be enforced, that the Bureau's role in overseeing the experiments will become even more absolute. Tris sees where this is heading. The Bureau isn't just an observer, it is an oppressor. And if something isn't done soon, their control will spread beyond just Chicago. It will consume everything. And so, for the first time, Tris and Tobias find themselves on the same side again, not just against the Bureau, but against the idea that anyone has the right to determine another person's worth. The Bureau is reeling from the aftermath of Nita's failed attack. Security has tightened, and the already fragile trust between the Bureau and its subjects has shattered. Guards patrol the hallways more frequently, surveillance increases, and access to restricted areas is now nearly impossible. But the greatest consequence is not physical, it is psychological. The attack has given David the perfect justification to reinforce the Bureau's control, and he wastes no time in doing so. Tris watches as David asserts more authority, speaking of the genetically damaged as dangerous and in need of stricter containment. The language he uses is eerily similar to the rhetoric G9 Matthews once used about the Factionless and the Divergent. It is the same message wrapped in different words. Some people are inherently superior, and others must be controlled for the greater good. The memory serum, the very thing Nita tried to destroy, remains David's most powerful weapon. Tris learns that the Bureau has long used it to erase the memories of those who resist its authority. The serum is not just a defense mechanism. It is a tool of oppression, capable of wiping out identities, rewriting histories, and turning entire populations into blank slates. The thought chills her to the core. Tobias, still recovering from his misguided alliance with Nita, throws himself into understanding the full extent of the Bureau's control. He finds himself pulled into conversations with Matthew, one of the few Bureau members who seems to share their concerns. Matthew is genetically pure, but he does not believe in the Bureau's ideology. He sees the injustice in their system, the manipulation, and the way power has corrupted even those who claim to act in the name of science. Together, Tris, Tobias, Christina, and Matthew uncover a horrifying truth. The Bureau is preparing to use the memory serum on Chicago. David and his scientists have determined that the city's experiment has failed. The faction system has collapsed, war has broken out, and the conflict between Evelyn's Factionless and Johanna's Allegiant is escalating beyond control. Rather than allow the city to destroy itself, the Bureau intends to wipe everyone's memories and reset the experiment entirely. Triss cannot let that happen. She has spent too long fighting against the illusion of control, against leaders who justify their cruelty with the excuse of protecting others. The Bureau is no different from G9, no different from the faction system itself. It is another structure built on the belief that people must be managed, that free will is a liability. But stopping the Bureau will not be easy. The memory serum is stored deep within the compound, guarded more heavily than anything else. If Triss and the others want to stop it from being deployed, they will have to act quickly and with precision. As the group debates their options, another complication arises. Tobias receives a message from Chicago. Marcus, his father, has reached out to Johanna in a bid for power, claiming that he alone can restore order to the city. Johanna, desperate for a solution to the factionless tyranny, is considering his offer. Tobias is horrified. He knows Marcus better than anyone, knows that his father does not care about peace or justice. Marcus only cares about power, about control. If he succeeds in convincing Johanna to support him, then Chicago will trade one dictator for another. Torn between the battle inside the Bureau and the chaos in Chicago, Tobias makes a difficult decision. He must return to the city. He must stop his father before it is too late. Triss understands, but the weight of their separation hangs heavy between them. They have spent so much time fighting battles on different fronts, struggling to trust each other. And now, once again, they must go their separate ways. Tobias leaves with Christina, heading back toward the city through the underground tunnels. Triss watches him go, feeling the familiar ache of uncertainty. She wants to believe that they will both make it out of this alive, that they will find a way to come back to each other. But war is brewing on both sides of the fence, and Triss knows that in war, nothing is certain. As Tobias and Christina make their way back to Chicago, Triss remains at the Bureau, determined to find a way to stop David's plan. The weight of responsibility presses down on her. She has faced many battles before, against G9, against the Factionless, against the very foundations of the system she grew up in. But this is different. The Bureau isn't just one leader or one ideology. It is an entire institution, deeply rooted in history and belief. Overthrowing it will take more than just bravery. It will take strategy, sacrifice, and the willingness to risk everything. Triss immerses herself in planning, but she cannot ignore the growing tension around her. David is watching her closely. Though he still acts like a mentor, there is a shift in his demeanor, a cold calculation behind his words. He knows she is dangerous. He knows that she has the potential to disrupt everything he has built. And most importantly, he knows that she is willing to act. At the same time, the Bureau's rigid ideology continues to gnaw at Triss. The classification of people into genetically pure and genetically damaged has always seemed absurd to her. But now, she sees the full extent of its damage. The Bureau believes it is justified in its actions because it views itself as superior. It is this belief that allows them to manipulate entire cities, to erase minds without remorse, to treat people as mere subjects in an experiment. Triss realizes that stopping the memory serum from being released in Chicago is not enough. The Bureau itself must be exposed. With the help of Matthew and Kara, she devises a plan. The Bureau's entire justification for its actions rests on the idea that the genetically damaged are inherently flawed. If she can disprove this, if she can find a way to reveal that genetic purity is meaningless, she can destroy the foundation of the Bureau's power. But the plan will have to wait, because there is another battle to fight first. Tobias and Christina arrive in Chicago, only to find that things are worse than they expected. The conflict between the Factionless and the Allegiant has escalated into all-out war. Evelyn has tightened her grip on the city, using fear and force to maintain control. The Allegiant, led by Johanna, are growing more desperate, willing to take drastic measures to overthrow the Factionless rule. And in the middle of it all stands Marcus Eaton, whispering in Johanna's ear, offering her the illusion of order. Tobias knows his father well enough to understand his true motives. Marcus does not want peace, he wants dominance. He wants to restore the faction system, not because he believes in it, but because he sees it as a means to reclaim his own authority. If Johanna allies with him, Chicago will be caught in another cycle of oppression. Determined to prevent this, Tobias does something he never thought he would do. He confronts his mother. The conversation is tense, filled with unspoken wounds and deep resentment. Evelyn is not the woman she once was. She has fought too hard and sacrificed too much to let go of her power now. She believes that she is the only one capable of ruling the city, that if she steps aside, chaos will consume everything. But Tobias is not the same boy she abandoned years ago. He does not let her justify her tyranny. He tells her the truth, that she has become the very thing she once fought against, that she is using fear in the same way Marcus once used it against her, that if she continues down this path, she will lose the only thing that ever mattered, her son. Evelyn listens, and for the first time in a long time, she hesitates. Tobias sees the cracks in her resolve. He pushes further, offering her a way out. If she agrees to step down peacefully, to relinquish her control without bloodshed, she can still have a relationship with him. She can still be a mother. It is a gamble, but it works. Evelyn, exhausted from years of fighting, agrees. She will leave Chicago, walk away from the war, and give the city the chance to rebuild on its own. With Evelyn stepping down, Marcus loses his leverage. Johanna, realizing that she has been manipulated, turns against him. The war does not end instantly, but the tide shifts. The battle for control is no longer a matter of brute force. It is a battle of ideas. And without Evelyn or Marcus to fan the flames, the people of Chicago begin to look for a different path forward. Back at the Bureau, Triss receives word of Tobias's success, but there is little time to celebrate. David is making his final move. The Bureau has set a deadline. The memory serum will be deployed in Chicago soon, wiping out everything, the factions, the war, the identities of every person who has fought and struggled to define their own lives. Triss knows what she has to do. It is time to act. The weight of the coming decision settles over Triss like an impending storm. There is no room for hesitation. If the Bureau is allowed to release the memory serum over Chicago, everything, the struggles, the sacrifices, the fight for identity, will be erased. The city will become a blank slate, rewritten under the Bureau's control. It is a fate worse than war. Triss gathers with Christina, Matthew, and Kara to finalize their plan. Their objective is clear. They must infiltrate the Bureau's weapons vault and disable the memory serum deployment. But the vault is heavily guarded, and David is watching their every move. Even within the Bureau, tensions are rising. Some of the scientists have begun to question the ethics of their work, but their loyalty to the system runs deep. Tobias, still in Chicago, prepares for his own mission. The city is teetering on the edge of collapse. While Evelyn has agreed to step down, there is still no clear path forward. The Allegiant are divided, and the Factionless remain wary. Without leadership, Chicago could spiral into chaos once more. Tobias knows that he cannot force a resolution, but he can at least offer a chance at peace. Returning to the Bureau, Tobias reunites with Triss, their brief moment of solace overshadowed by what is to come. They both understand the stakes. If they fail, they will lose everything. The plan is set into motion. Caleb, carrying the weight of his past betrayal, volunteers for the most dangerous part of the mission, entering the weapons vault and triggering the memory serum release within the Bureau itself. His reasoning is clear. If the Bureau's leaders forget their own manipulations, they will no longer have the means to control Chicago. It is a desperate, irreversible move, but it is the only way to ensure that the Bureau's influence is broken forever. Triss, however, is not willing to let Caleb make the sacrifice alone. She has spent too much time fighting, too much time resisting control, to allow someone else to take the fall in her place. It is not just about redemption, it is about choice. She will not be a pawn in anyone's game, not even in the battle for justice. Before Caleb can protest, Triss makes her decision. She will be the one to enter the vault. Tobias does not know yet. If he did, he would try to stop her. But Triss understands what must be done. She has fought too long for this moment to let fear hold her back. As she walks toward the Bureau's inner compound, the reality of her decisions sinks in. She thinks of her mother, of the sacrifices Natalie Prior made to protect her. She thinks of her father, of Will, of every loss that has brought her here. And she thinks of Tobias, of the future they dreamed of, but may never have. There is no turning back now. Inside the Bureau, David waits, confident in his control. He believes that he has won, that his authority is unshakable. But Triss is not just another experiment, not another subject to be manipulated. She is something the Bureau could never predict. She is divergent. The final confrontation is near, and in the depths of the Bureau, where the past and future collide, Triss prepares to make the ultimate sacrifice. Triss steps through the sterile halls of the Bureau, her heart pounding with each deliberate step. The weight of her choice settles in her chest, heavy yet unwavering. She has made her decision. She will be the one to enter the weapons vault, to release the memory serum inside the Bureau itself. She cannot let Caleb throw his life away in an attempt to atone for his past mistakes. She understands the cost of sacrifice, and she is willing to pay it. Caleb watches her go, realization dawning too late. He had expected to face his fate, to walk into the fire and burn for his sins, but Triss has taken his burden as her own. Guilt and helplessness claw at him, but he knows better than to try to stop her. Triss has always been strong-willed. When she makes a choice, she sees it through. The plan is set into motion. Christina, Matthew, and Kara work to secure the path for Triss, eliminating obstacles wherever they can. The Bureau is heavily guarded, and David has his people stationed everywhere, but they are not expecting this. They do not believe that anyone would dare to infiltrate their most secure facility. Triss moves with quiet determination, the echoes of her footsteps bouncing off the cold metal walls. As she approaches the entrance to the vault, she recalls Tobias's words to her once, "You're the bravest person I know." It was not just bravery that led her here, she thinks. It was love, the kind that demands action, that refuses to watch others suffer when something can be done. David's voice crackles over the intercom. "Beatrice," he says, his tone almost gentle. "Don't do this. We can find another way." But Triss knows there is no other way. She has seen the cruelty of control, the way power twists even those who believe they are acting for the greater good. The Bureau's influence must end, and it must end today. She takes a deep breath and enters the vault. Inside, the room is eerily silent. The air is crisp, sterile, untouched. The memory serum is housed in sleek, temperature-controlled vials, lined up in rows like soldiers awaiting command. The moment she activates the dispersal mechanism, every scientist, every leader in the Bureau will forget the world as they knew it. They will lose the narratives they have written for themselves, the justifications for their actions. They will be made equal in ignorance, just as they had sought to make others. She reaches for the control panel. Then, suddenly, the alarm blares. Red lights flash across the walls. She turns, pulse racing, and sees David wheeling himself into the room, flanked by 2 guards. His face is twisted in something like sorrow, but there is steel in his eyes. "I can't let you do this," he says. Triss squares her shoulders. "You don't have a choice." David shakes his head. "You're making a mistake. You think this is justice, but it's just another form of destruction." Triss knows that he believes this. He believes in the Bureau's mission, in the righteousness of what they have done. But she also knows that he is wrong. She moves toward the panel, but the guards raise their weapons. Her muscles tense. She could surrender. She could back down. But then she remembers her mother's voice, the quiet strength of it, the way she had given up everything to protect Triss. She remembers Tobias, the way he had looked at her when he said he loved her, as if he truly believed she was something more than just a girl from abnegation who had learned to fight. And so she runs. The first bullet grazes her shoulder, a sharp, burning pain tearing through her. She stumbles but keeps moving. Another shot rings out. This time, it hits her in the stomach. She gasps, her body crumpling forward, but she forces herself to stay upright. She is so close. Her fingers brush the lever. David is shouting now, but his words are drowned out by the rush of her own heartbeat. She is fading fast, but she cannot stop now. With the last of her strength, she pulls the lever. A soft hiss fills the room. The memory serum begins to disperse. David's expression collapses into something like horror as he realizes what has happened. The guards hesitate, uncertain, their certainty unraveling as the mist of the serum begins to spread through the air. Triss sways on her feet. She has done it. The Bureau will forget. The city will be free. As darkness creeps into the edges of her vision, she thinks of Tobias one last time. She wishes she could see him again, could tell him she is sorry, that she loves him, that she hopes he will be okay. And then, with a quiet exhale, she falls. The world does not stop for grief. Time moves forward, indifferent to the people left shattered in its wake. Tobias does not know how to exist in a world where Triss is gone. The weight of it presses into his chest, making it difficult to breathe, to think, to be. He had imagined a life with her, one where they fought for something better, and then got to live in the world they had built. Now, he is left with the ruins of a future that will never come to pass. He does not remember getting back to the city. The journey is a blur of exhaustion and emptiness, his mind unable to hold onto details. He only knows that he is back where it all began, in a city that no longer feels like home. The factions have been dissolved. The world they fought against is no more, but there is no sense of victory, only loss. Kara, Christina, and the others try to comfort him in small ways, gentle words, quiet presence. But nothing touches the hollow space where Triss used to be. He avoids talking about her. He avoids thinking about her, but the memories creep in anyway, sharp and relentless. He sees her in the way the wind moves through the abandoned Dauntless compound, in the flicker of candlelight at night, in the spaces between his thoughts. Evelyn is waiting for him when he returns. She is different now, the sharp edges of her ambitions softened, her power relinquished. She tells him that she has made a choice to step back, to allow the city to rebuild itself without another leader forcing control. She does not expect forgiveness from him, but she offers him something else, the chance to be her son again. He does not know how to answer. For so long, he has defined himself by what he is not. He is not just the son of Marcus Eaton. He is not just a dauntless soldier. He is not just four. But now, without the war, without Triss, without a fight to cling to, he is left wondering who he actually is. Christina stays by his side. She is grieving too, but she is not like him. She lets herself feel the loss fully, lets herself cry and rage and talk about Triss without hesitation. She wouldn't want us to be like this, she tells him one day. They are sitting in the ruins of the old abnegation sector, where silence stretches endlessly between them. Tobias does not respond. He does not know how to put into words the way grief feels like a second skin, the way he cannot escape it no matter where he goes. It is only when he finds the vial of memory serum that something in him shifts. It would be so easy. One injection, and the pain would be gone. He would not have to live with the weight of everything he has lost. He would not have to wake up every day to a world without her. He would forget Marcus, forget the scars left behind, forget all of it. He turns the vial in his hands, watching the liquid shift inside. Would Triss want this? He tries to imagine what she would say if she were here. He can almost hear her voice, steady, certain, filled with the quiet strength that had always set her apart. She would not tell him what to do, but she would ask him to choose, truly choose, rather than run away. He grips the vial tighter. He does not want to forget her. He does not want to forget any of it. So he sets the serum down. Days pass. He does not heal, not fully, but he begins to move through the world again. He starts working with Johanna and the others who are trying to help the city rebuild. He speaks to Evelyn slowly, cautiously, until the distance between them feels a little smaller. He keeps going, even when it hurts. And then one day, he finds himself standing at the top of the Hancock building. The wind howls around him, familiar and sharp. He grips the zip line harness in his hands. He thinks of Triss, and then he lets go. The wind rushes past Tobias as he glides down the zip line from the Hancock building, the city stretching out beneath him. He closes his eyes for a moment, allowing the sensation to take over, a memory of another time when Triss had done this same thing, her laughter ringing through the air. He had watched her then, admiring her fearlessness, the way she embraced the unknown with open arms. Now, as he soars down, he understands what she must have felt, the freedom of surrendering to the moment, to the world, to something bigger than himself. As he lands, Christina is waiting. She smiles, though it doesn't quite reach her eyes. "I never thought you'd do it again," she says. Tobias shrugs, unfastening the harness. "I had to." She nods as if she understands. Maybe she does. Christina has always been the one to push forward, to keep moving even when it hurts. They don't talk about Triss, not now. Instead, they walk together, stepping over the broken pavement of the city that once trapped them all in endless cycles of control. The factions are gone. The the bureau dismantled. And now the people left behind must figure out how to rebuild from the ashes. Johanna leads the effort, her quiet strength guiding those who still search for order. She proposes a system that will allow people to govern themselves, to work together without the rigid lines of factions. Not everyone agrees, change is difficult, and there are still those who long for the past, for the security of labels and divisions. But the world cannot return to what it was, and Tobias knows that. For the first time in his life, he is not fighting against something. He is simply living. He spends time with Evelyn, tentative at first, unsure of what kind of relationship they can have now that the war is over. She tells him she is leaving the city, choosing a life beyond its borders, away from the pain of her past. She invites him to come with her, but he declines. He is not ready to leave, not yet. Instead, he focuses on what remains. He works to help Christina, Kara, and Johanna with their plans for the future. He finds himself speaking to people more, helping where he can. Slowly, he starts to see the pieces of a new world forming, not perfect, not without struggle, but different. Better, it is not easy. Some days he feels the weight of loss pressing down on him so hard he can barely breathe. But he remembers what Triss fought for. Not just freedom, but the chance for something new. The chance to live. One afternoon, he finds himself in the old, dauntless compound. The walls are crumbling, the halls filled with dust, but the spirit of the place lingers. He closes his eyes and remembers what it was like, the adrenaline, the camaraderie, the reckless thrill of jumping onto moving trains and facing fears head on. He is not that person anymore. He is not the boy who hid behind numbers and walls of strength. He is Tobias Eaton, and for the first time, he is learning what that truly means. The days continue to pass, and slowly, he finds himself falling into a new routine. He spends time at the old abnegation sector, helping to repair what can be salvaged. He learns how to build, how to create rather than destroy. He works alongside others who are also trying to find a purpose in this new world. Christina stays by his side. She is his closest friend now, the one who understands the weight of loss, the one who does not expect him to be whole. She makes him laugh sometimes, though it feels strange on his lips, but he allows it. He allows himself to feel, even when it hurts. One evening, he visits Caleb. He does not know why he goes, only that something in him urges him forward. Caleb looks thinner, tired, his grief etched into his face. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. "I didn't expect to see you," Caleb finally says. "I didn't expect to come," Tobias admits. There is a silence between them, heavy with everything that has happened. Tobias still does not forgive him, not entirely. But he sees now that Caleb carries his own burden, his own guilt, and maybe that is punishment enough. "She would want us to move forward," Tobias says, the words surprising even himself. "Not forget, but move forward." Caleb nods, his hands tightening around the edge of the table. "I know." Tobias leaves without another word, but something in him feels different. Not healed, but not as broken as before. As time goes on, the city begins to change. The remnants of the faction system fade away, replaced by something new. People work together not because they are forced to, but because they choose to. It is not perfect. There are still disagreements, still struggles, but it is progress. And Tobias, he is learning to live again. One night, he dreams of Triss. She is standing at the edge of a familiar rooftop, the wind playing with her hair. She turns to him, smiling, and for the first time in a long while, he does not feel the sharp ache of loss. Instead, he feels peace. He wakes up with her name on his lips, and for the first time, he does not cry. The city, once a fractured place of rigid rules and endless conflicts, is now something else entirely. The remnants of the factions are fading, leaving behind people who must redefine what it means to live without the systems that once defined them. The air carries an unfamiliar stillness, a quiet aftermath of all that has transpired. Tobias stands on the rooftop of a half-destroyed building, looking out at what remains, knowing that even after all the pain, there is still something left to build. The days pass in a blur of reconstruction. Johanna and the remaining leaders are shaping a new system, one without erudite intelligence ruling over others, without dauntless bravado demanding recklessness, without the self-sacrifice of abnegation or the idealism of amity. It is messy and uncertain, but for the first time, it belongs to everyone. There is no singular way to exist, no expectation to fit into a box. The people who remain must learn to live with that freedom. Tobias spends his days working with Christina and Kara, helping where he can. He has thrown himself into labor, rebuilding parts of the city, repairing structures, creating something from the wreckage. The physical work keeps him grounded, keeps him from slipping too far into the past. He avoids the places that hold too many memories. The ruins of dauntless headquarters, the glass-covered erudite compound, the old abnegation houses, though he forces himself to go there sometimes. He does not visit the bureau. That part of his life, the truths revealed, the lies unraveled, feels like a distant wound, one that does not deserve reopening. What lingers most are the people who are gone. His mother, choosing exile beyond the city. Uriah, his life cut short before he could see what the world might become. Tris, who sacrificed herself, who believed so completely in a future beyond herself that she gave everything to see it through. The thought of her no longer fills him with unbearable grief, but it will always leave an ache. He spends time with Caleb. It is awkward at first, the weight of betrayal and regret sitting between them like an unspoken wall. But Tobias does not have the energy to hate him anymore. They are both living with ghosts. Slowly, they begin to talk. Not about the past, not about Tris, at least not at first, but about the city, about what is next. Caleb is trying to find his place in this new world, much like Tobias. One day, Tobias finds himself in the old Dauntless sector, standing in front of the tattoo parlor. The door creaks open, and inside, the space is empty but familiar. He runs a hand over the counter, remembering the first time he sat there, the needle pressing into his skin, Tori's voice steady as she worked. The symbols on his back still remain his past, his fears, his choices. But he is not that boy anymore. He makes a decision. Weeks later, he steps onto the train tracks, standing near the edge as the wind whips around him. Christina is at his side, watching, waiting. He grips the small container in his hands, his fingers tightening around it. The ashes inside feel impossibly heavy, as though they contain more than just what remains of a body. They hold the weight of memories, of love, of everything Tris was. "Are you sure?" Christina asks. He nods. There are no words needed. He lifts the container, tilts it, and watches as the ashes scatter into the wind. They are carried away beyond the city, beyond everything they knew. Free. As the last traces disappear, he exhales a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He does not say goodbye. He does not need to. Time moves forward. The city rebuilds. The scars remain, but they are part of the foundation of what is to come. Tobias finds himself moving with it, not as a soldier, not as a faction member, but as himself. He does not have all the answers. He does not know exactly what the future holds, but he knows that he will face it. The Divergent series is a story of identity, of rebellion, of the search for truth in a world built on lies. It is about the dangers of control, about what happens when humanity is forced into narrow definitions of who they should be. But at its core, it is also a story of love and sacrifice, of bravery not just in battle, but in the willingness to fight for something greater than oneself. Triss and Tobias's journey from the faction system to the Bureau, from the walls of the city to the uncertainty beyond, reflects the struggle of finding one's own path in a world that constantly tries to define it for you. Triss, with her unwavering belief in what is right, embodies the idea that courage is not just about facing fear, but about making choices that matter. Tobias, shaped by pain but never broken, learns that survival is not the same as living. Through war, betrayal, loss, and hope, this story captures the complexity of human nature, the need for belonging, the pull of power, and the strength it takes to forge a new way forward. And now, as one chapter closes, another begins. Our next book will take us somewhere different, yet just as compelling, a story filled with wonder, mystery, and imagination. Stay with us as we continue our journey into the world of literature, exploring the depths of storytelling and the impact it leaves behind.